Yep.
Hi, I'm Erin, and this is my itchy friend Dixie. And today we're going to read to you chapter 16 of Misty of Chincoteague. This chapter is called The Pulley Bone. The next 3 months were filled with excitement for the Phantom and her owners. Paul and Maureen were conditioning her for the big race. They fed her more liberally on grain. They rode her 3 miles each day, starting off at a slow jog, then trotting her, then asking her for a burst of speed midway of the ride, then slowly jogging her back home again. It was early in the morning when the world was all red and gold with the rising sun that Paul and Maureen chose for the Phantom's training period. They would take turns riding her across the tundra-like beach, hard packed after a rain. Up and down Main Street where her hooves sounded like a seashell's pinging against the pavement. Over trails carpeted with pine needles where she made no sound at all. They rode her out to the pony penning grounds, getting her used to the feel of the track and the sight of the white fence. Before long, the Phantom came to be familiar with the glorious sight. Her fame grew and spread. Now, on pleasant Sundays, visitors from the mainland began coming to see her. Misty grew jealous of the attention her mother was getting. She would nose in, trying to nip up on the buttons of the men's coats or the flowers on the ladies' hats. One time, she lifted a hat covered in roses and dropped it right in the water barrel. This brought Grandpa running with a handful of gummy snacks. He pretended to be angry as he rescued the dripping hat and tried to dry it off with the sacks. "Paul and Maureen," he would shout in a thunderous voice, "hadn't you ever gonna drive off any sense into that Misty's head? She'll grow up thinking she's a baby all of her days. Never seen a critter so meddlesome." I wonder how he feels about that, Dixie. As July came in and the pony penning day drew near, something came between Paul and Maureen. If Paul worked around the barnyard, Maureen made some excuse to go off down to the oyster boats and see if the men had brought up any sea stars in their oyster tongs. And if Maureen worked at home for Grandpa and Grandma, Paul went off treading clams for Kim's horse pepper or catching seahorses. "What's the matter twixt Paul and Maureen?" Grandma asked Grandpa one night after the house was still. "I don't know for sure, mind ye, but I suspicion it's about the race," Grandpa replied. "Why? I thought that 'twas all settled. Can't the Phantom gonna run?" "Of course, but the catch is, who's gonna ride her?" "They both hankering to ride?" questioned Grandma. "That's my guess," Grandpa nodded. Finally, on the Monday morning before the pony penning, Grandma asked the question right out. She and Maureen were hanging up clothes on the time, while Paul, perched up on the chicken coop, was silently whittling a pole into a clothesprop. "Which of ye," Grandma said as she removed a clothespin from her mouth, "which of ye will ride the Phantom in the big race?" A long silence was the only answer. "Well, well," said Grandma brightly, "if you won't state your rathers, I've got a fine idea." Still no answer. Maureen shook the creases out of the tablecloth as if her life depended on it. Paul kept on whittling furiously. Just then Grandpa came by. He glanced around sharply. "Why is everyone so hushed?" he asked. "Except for the flapping of clothes, I'd think it was Sunday meeting time." "Why, I just asked who's going to ride the Phantom come pony penning day," replied Grandma, hanging her clothespin back on the line, looking for another. "Oh," and Grandpa strung the little word out there. It seemed to have springs on it. He dropped the post-hole digger he was carrying and towed it with his boots. Seconds went by. "If I wasn't 73, I'd settle the whole matter and ride her myself." Grandma straightened from her clothes basket. "Clarence," she said, "seems like something told me to save the pulley bone from that harsh man. It's hanging over there, over the almanac in the kitchen." Grandma slapped his thigh. "Nothing could be fairer than a pulley bone," he exclaimed. "The one that breaks off the biggest part gets to ride." "I'll fetch it," Maureen called over her shoulder as she disappeared into the kitchen. She came out holding one end of the wishbone very gingerly, as though it might break off in her hand. "Now then," Grandpa cleared his throat nervously. Grandma picked up the empty clothes basket and set it down the very same spot. "Now then," Grandpa repeated. "Stop that Gold darn whittling and step up, Paul. Paul's legs seemed as wobbly as a colt's. He came forward very slowly. His hand shook as he grasped the other end of the wishbone between his thumb and forefinger. Squint your eyes tight, Grandpa directed. Make your wish, and when I count to 3, pull. Paul and Maureen each took a deep breath as they clutched the tiny wishbone that was to decide their fate. 1, Grandpa counted slowly. 2, and 3. With a slight crackling noise, the wishbone broke. The larger half was in Paul's hands. Dixie wanted to see the picture. He gave a whistle of joy. Then his face sobered with the sight of Maureen, who was burying herself with half the wishbone in the sandy soil. She looked up, trying to cover her feelings with a little smile. You won, Paul, she said, blinking. You'll ride her better anyhow.